Hi, everyone. Welcome to episode 122 of Cell and Gene, the podcast. If you're new here, welcome. And if you've tuned in before, welcome back. I'm Erin Harris, host of the podcast, and today's episode is one I've really been looking forward to. I'm joined by Paul Romness, CEO of OS Therapies. Paul and I dig into one of the toughest challenges in pediatric oncology, pulmonary metastatic osteosarcoma, or PMO. Paul shares why there's still no standard of care, how an off the shelf HER2 immunotherapy is changing the survival conversation. And we talk about the surprising lessons that can be learned from canines. As usual, it's a science forward, honest, and hopeful conversation that I think you'll find valuable. Here's my conversation with OS Therapies' Paul Romness. Enjoy. Hi, Paul. Welcome to Cell and Gene, the podcast. Thanks for being here.
Thank you, Erin. It's an honor.
Tell us a little bit about OS Therapies.
So when we started OS Therapies, the OS stood for osteosarcoma, and that is our primary mission. We have an immunotherapy, an off-the-shelf immunotherapy that was developed at University of Pennsylvania. We have since added all other indications in the HER2 cancer arena of solid tumors. So that OS really stands for overall survival, which is the kind of barrier to entry at the FDA.
I love that. I love that meaning behind OS Therapies. That's great. So let's talk a little bit about PMO, or pulmonary metastatic osteosarcoma. Now, that remains a challenge with poor prognosis, but tell us from your perspective, what are the biggest unmet needs facing the PMO patient?
So there is absolutely no standard of care. There isn't even a standard of care once osteosarcoma patient is metastasized, even at an institutional level. So you may have two different physicians at the same, possibly world-renowned center doing completely different things when a patient metastasizes. As you know, Erin, the osteosarcoma presents in the long bones after puberty when the growth plates come together in boys and girls, adolescent, young adults. And the patients receive 9 months of chemo. They have the cancer resected from their bone about 2 months in. But if it doesn't come back, that's great. They have to live with the side effects of the chemo, which a lot of times is hearing loss and, some type of implant in their leg. But if it does come back, and it comes back in about half the patients, that's the, metastatic, pulmonary metastatic osteosarcoma you're talking about. And there's just no standard of care.
Awful. So, all right. So talk to us then a little bit about the clinical challenges around preventing relapse or monitoring disease progression if there is no, in fact, standard of care.
Well, and that's the other problem. There's nothing really out there. There's no real data collected on these patients because they're all receiving different types of treatment. Some physicians and caregivers try the chemo again, which, clearly it didn't work in the first place. Really bad side effects. There are some other, treatments in Europe, MEPAC, which is an immunotherapy, and we're just trying to get something here in the United States, and we're also applying in the EU and the UK as well at this time.
So, fantastic. Talk to us then a little bit about OST HER2's phase B overall survival rates for PMO. I guess to start us off, tell us about the actual trial, and then
sure,
what have we found to date? Where are we with it?
Sure. So we're stimulating the immune system with attenuated or weakened listeria with a HER2 vector fused to it. And when the body realizes there's listeria in the body, it's a huge immune response. And what the trials that were done were both done in canines, phase 1 and phase 3 trials. There was a phase 1 human trial, but it was in adults with end-stage HER2 solid tumors, all comers. They didn't really want to use the osteosarcoma patients in the phase 1 because osteosarcoma patients are so rare. So we did a phase 2B trial in 21 facilities across the country, the top pediatric oncology hospitals across the country. 41 patients received our therapy. These were patients that had had a metastatic, pulmonary metastatic uh, osteosarcoma in their lungs and was resected. And then they received our immunotherapy. And the event-free survival was around 35%, if I remember, as compared to, high single digits, low double digits, like 8 to 13%, which is pretty good. But the overall survival was even better at 75 to 77%, versus after 2 years versus 40% overall survival. So I think, even though some of the patients recurred, I think the more important thing is that they're still alive. And so the patients are doing much better on our therapy. And we started that clinical trial on October 21st, 2021. We finished it in October of 2024, about a year under budget. So it was a popular trial to enroll in, as you might expect, considering the lack of standard of care and, very minimal side effects, chills and slight fever, which is what you would assume from an immune response. And so with that, we are going to the FDA over the next 4 to 6 weeks here,
Mhm.
4 to 8 weeks, and the EU's EMA and the UK's MHRA. And we've gotten some really good news and feedback from all of them so far.
Wonderful. Well, congratulations. That's incredibly successful.
Thank you.
Um, Tell us then a little bit about, I mean, you mentioned, of course, the regulator side of this and working with them. How has working with the regulators been to date? How have they responded to your safety data? And just in general, what steps did you and your team take to optimize both efficacy and safety throughout product development?
So we knew going in that the side effects were minimal because of the phase 1 trial in adults and the phase 1 and phase 3 trials in canines. Um, I don't know if we're going to talk about the canines in a little bit or not, Erin, but everyone loves their dogs, and osteosarcoma in dogs is much more prevalent. It's 30 to 40,000 cases a year in the United States versus 1,000. But we learned a lot from canines. And if you think about it, most medicines go from humans to companion animals. This was the rare case where our therapy was conditionally approved by the USDA in dogs ever before it was received in patients in clinical trials or approved. So, the dogs are really showing us the value of this therapy, and the side effects were minimal, and they had the same similar results. They have a very genetically similar osteosarcoma disease to humans. They present the same way, they metastasize the same way in the lungs. And so, with that safety side effect, and then with the very clear separation between overall survival and event-free survival, the EU and the UK have been very willing to work with the data that we have. The US FDA has challenged us a little bit around historic comparators. And so we are developing and are pulling together biomarkers, as well as the canine data, as well as our overall survival data. The FDA has been very clear that they want to see the overall survival, which is just fine with us.
Wonderful, wonderful. Uh, and I'd be happy to talk more about the canine aspect of this. Is there anything that, especially for cell and gene therapy developers who would be listening to this, what additional information have you learned from working with the canine aspect of this? Maybe some unexpected or, you know, anything unexpected that came up that was either positive or even maybe a little bit challenging that you had to overcome.
Actually, a huge opportunity. The biomarkers are very telling in canines, and that's what we hope to use with the FDA. Um, we have been told that we qualify for regenerative medicine advanced therapy designation, so RMAT, from the FDA. We just need to provide some additional clinical data to them. We've been told by the UK and the EU that our therapy is fitting of the conditions for regenerative medicine in Europe and UK. So that's really good. And so I think for your cell and gene engineers, that's something that's very important to the company. It opens up a lot of opportunities for the therapy because it's being very specifically dosed to the correct patients that are going to benefit the most.
Excellent. Before I let you go, let's talk a little bit about where you see the treatment for PMO heading in the next few years, and specifically OS therapies as you're working on it.
Well, and look, we started OS therapies to get more treatments in osteosarcoma. And what I've noticed recently is there are a lot more companies interested in this space, which is exactly what we want. We certainly will be the first to market by a significant period of time. And then we're going to pivot to other solid tumors. But we want as many folks in this space as possible. I started this company on a personal mission. My daughter's best friend had osteosarcoma, and she's doing great. I'm going to be with her over Thanksgiving. She's at UCLA Med School. And,
Wonderful.
She's one of the success stories, but about half the kids aren't as lucky. And it's this pulmonary metastatic osteosarcoma that's the real killer. And if there are more companies that want to come into the space, come on in, the water's fine, because we need as many treatments as possible. Is our therapy a home run? No, it's not, but it significantly improves overall survival, and it helps with event-free survival. And so this is not the end of the line for osteosarcoma treatment and for metastatic osteosarcoma. So we need as many shots on goal as we can with other therapies as well that may be complementary to what we're doing. We do have an ADC technology that's further back in the pipeline. If we can develop a multi-payload delivery system for that nasty 9 months of chemo that they get in primary osteosarcoma of just doxorubicin, methotrexate, and cisplatin, and we can deliver it with the silicone covering that we do with our ADCs. So it's inactive until it gets into the cancer environment. And the nice thing about silicone is it gets broken down by pH level. And the pH level in the cancer environment is lower. So we can drop those payloads in the cancer environment and have them go active there. And that may be another place where we come to osteosarcoma. And so we're really excited about the attention that osteosarcoma and pulmonary metastatic osteosarcoma is getting as a result of not only OS therapies, but we helped start a nonprofit before we started OS therapies called oscollaborative.org. And there's a lot of attention to osteosarcoma now, which is great.
Wonderful. Thank you. And thank you for sharing your story here with the Cell and Gene, the podcast listeners. This is really helpful and informative to learn more about the situation. That's a wrap on this episode of Cell and Gene, the podcast featuring OS Therapies' Paul Romness. Paul, thank you so much for your time and for all the information you shared. And I do hope you'll come back with us and share the progress, maybe perhaps sometime next year, to bring us up to speed on where you are.
Great. Thanks, Erin.
And thank you, listeners, for tuning in. Please subscribe to Cell and Gene, the podcast, wherever you tune in, and so you never miss an insightful episode just like this one. And we will talk to you soon.